charged more for the county building than it would have cost to use the lane center, and she didn't realize that at the time. Yeah, because they charged $1,100, $1,200 bucks, I think it was. Yeah, and that wasn't, that wasn't even doing any refreshments or anything. But the lane center does all that. From what I understand, it's like $850.
Really?
Yeah. It'd be nice if we had something to rent out. Just don't know where you put it. Just got parking too.
Yeah, that's there in line is the big problem. Ready? All right, call the meeting to order. Everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the Frostburg blessing.
We are thankful for this special community, for the time we share together, and the bounty of our nation. We are thankful for the commitment of our people who volunteer their time and talents to make our community a better place to live, work, and raise a family. We know that we alone cannot meet the challenges or provide sufficient inspiration without community involvement and the dedication of all concerned to the greater good of this city and all who reside in it. We are thankful for the beauty, the time, and the place that is Frostburg. Amen.
You may be seated.
Commissioner Donnie Carter,
Here.
Commissioner Nina Forsythe,
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Grove,
Here.
Commissioner Adam Ritchie,
Here.
and let the record reflect that Mayor Robert Flanagan is not present tonight. He is attending the Maryland Municipal League Mayor's Conference in Annapolis.
All right, can I get a motion for an approval of the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
We don't have any special presentations. Mayor and Commissioner reports. Get a motion to approve the Commissioner reports.
I make a motion we approve the monthly reports.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, on down to public hearings. Ordinance 2022-08.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ordinance 22-08 amends the city code to be in Ordinance 22-08 amends the city ethics code, which is part of the city code, to comply with state regulations. The State Ethics Commission reviewed this ordinance to make sure that the changes that were made to the city's ethics code met the state standards, and the ethics board confirmed with the city attorney that it meets all requirements. It updated some language regarding conflicts of interest and other financial donation information. If there's any questions on this, I would be happy to answer them. But at this time, since this is an ordinance, there would be a public hearing. So anyone wishing to make public comment can come to the podium, and we'd ask that you state your name and address for the record. No one? Okay.
All right, moving on to ordinance 2022-09.
Thank you. Ordinance 2022-09 pertains to solicitor's permits. Currently in the city code, we have language referring to a solicitor permit, which is individuals or organizations that may go to door to door in order to sell something. And what this ordinance does is changes the language from solicitor permit to solicitor registration. We had several complaints about certain solicitors in town that were selling a different energy utility provider. And using the term permit tends to infer that the city is condoning their practices, and the city is not. The city is just allowing them to go door to door and have their contact information should there be any complaints. The police department can respond to their solicitors because we collect with the business headquarter information as well as their business license information. So effectively, what this does is it removes the term solicitor permit and updates it to solicitor registration. And remaining the same, children selling lemonade or Girl Scout cookies, and religious organizations do not require to be registered as solicitors. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but at this time, anyone wishing to offer comment can come to the podium and state their name and address for the record and offer their comments.
All right, hearing none, moving on to combined sewer overflow.
It's been a while since we've had a combined sewer overflow meeting, so this one might be lengthy, but for me that's still pretty quick to the point. So we have been in winter shutdown with our current ongoing projects. The only ongoing project we have at the moment is phase 9C. It's been in winter shutdown, but they do expect to start again earlier than initially expected. They plan to start March 1st and get the ball rolling. We anticipate that project being done by the end of this summer. It should wrap up fairly quickly compared to some of the ones we've had in the past. Phase 10A, which is down by Mountain Ridge High School, that is 99% done design. We plan to take that to bid here in about a month, pending MDE approval. And then phase 10B and 10C are actually coming up later in this meeting for approval for engineering designs. But once we cut that loose, those projects will be designed and then hopefully bid out by the end of the summer for a hopeful groundbreaking of November 1st of this year. They will be lengthy projects, but they're also in the Mountain Ridge area. If there are any questions about more of the specifics of those projects, I'd be happy to elaborate on them, but
I have a question. You said it's gonna start in November?
hopefully. It would be a tentative groundbreaking, so mobilization, doing some test pitting to find out exactly what's in the ground. And
So
then,
you're starting in the middle winter here. Is that an issue?
not for what we would be doing. It's just a tentative groundbreaking, so that just means mobilization, getting equipment in, kind of.
So when do you actually plan on digging?
The first heavy construction would start after winter shutdown, which would be either March or April.
Okay, thank you.
If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Moving on to old business. Ordinance 2022-08.
This ordinance was subject of a advertised public hearing earlier this evening. At this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the ordinance on second reading.
I make a motion we approve ordinance 2022-08 on the second reading.
Second?
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next up is ordinance 2022-09.
Again, this was subject of a advertised public hearing earlier in this evening. As there was no public comment at this time, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the ordinance on second reading.
I make a motion, we adopt ordinance 2022-09.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, and now on to new business. Budget process schedule for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you, Commissioner. As reviewed in your work session last week, February is the month that the city staff in consultation with you begin the budget preparation process in earnest. The departmental requests are being submitted to the finance department now, and at your March meeting, a draft budget will be presented at your work session, as well as discussion on the tax rate and utility fees. As always, at your May meeting, that is when you will need to vote on a final budget so that it is in effect 20 days before the new fiscal year. If there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, moving on to ordinance 2023-01.
This ordinance was requested by Allegheny County Department of Economic Development, working with some of their clients, or not clients, but businesses within the industrial park whom they have a relationship with. The city has a technology light industrial zoning district, which covers the Frostburg Business Park off of Village Parkway, Hoffman Hollow Road, as well as the Innovation Center. I don't know the new name of it, but the one on Braddock Road next to the Appalachian Lab. Currently, restaurant uses are not a permitted or special exception use in that zoning district. However, in considering the business park nature of that zoning district, and that many other jurisdictions that have business parks do allow restaurants in that type of zoning district to support the employees that work there, this ordinance would add restaurant use as a special exception to the technology light industrial zoning district. So this is a text amendment to the zoning ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the ordinance on first reading and set the March 16th, 2023 council meeting as an advertised public hearing.
Can I get a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2023-01 on the first reading.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Moving on to resolution 2023-02.
This resolution approves updates and rescinds various projects using the American Rescue Plan Act funds. As you know, the city's policy regarding the ARPA funds is to have the mayor and council approve every program or project through a resolution. So this resolution rescinds the approval of the Savage Well Rehab project, as other regular funding has been identified for that. Rescind the approval of the rental housing relief program, as they did a survey and the documented need was not sufficient. It formally approves the $50,000 towards the coal miner memorial park. That was something that was discussed several meetings ago but never formalized, as well as replacing the welcome sign at the intersection of 36 and 40, as well as the city smoke testing and mapping. That contract's approved, but the ARPA resolution we needed to clean up. It would also approve design for the Mechanic Street parking lot, which contract will be discussed later tonight. The Centennial Street water line replacement that Hayden discussed at your work session. Approve the purchase of tasers and in-car computers for the police department. Again, that'll be another resolution approving the purchase tonight. It will provide some cash infusion to phase 10A of the CSO elimination projects, and it would fund the city's portion, estimated to be just below $50,000. But that's before bids come in for the child care center construction. That's predominantly being funded by community project funding through Senator Van Hollen's office, as well as community development block grant. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-02.
I make a motion, we approve resolution 2023-02.
Second?
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, moving on to resolution 2023-03.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. As we discussed at your work session last week, we have recommended some budget amendments for this fiscal year based on activities that have occurred that were unexpected at the time the budget was prepared, or things that we expected that have not occurred. A lot of this is tied to the ARPA projects. I did want to highlight a few changes that were made compared to the version that we discussed at work session. These are in the water fund and in the sewer fund. In the version of the budget amendments that we looked at last week, in the water fund, the only amendment was for the water department roof. And after some discussions further with Director of Public Works and evaluating the needs for the meter replacement program for the remainder of this year, the recommendation is to reduce that budget line item, as we don't have the need to purchase many more meters, and we'll have limited need to hire a plumber to do some of those installations, and then reallocating that funding to other areas that are needed, partly for ARPA projects and also for just ongoing operating needs that are higher than originally budgeted. So the net effect on the water fund is no increase in overall revenue or expenses. It's just a reallocation among different line items. The change in the sewer fund is that the original amendment was an increase just in the capital outlay line item, mainly tied to the RK&K contract for the smoke testing and the mapping of the infrastructure. And we have, again, in consultation with Hayden, determined that the smoke testing portion is better classified as a sewer operating expense, whereas the mapping will be a capitalized item and should be in capital outlay. So again, the total budget amendment in that fund did not change. It's just a change in line items. So just a brief summary of the overall budget amendments. In the corporate fund, we would be increasing budgeted revenue and expenses by $527,000. This includes the public safety equipment that's been discussed, some projects in the recreation department funded by POS and LPPI grants, and moving the comprehensive plan out of this fiscal year. In the water fund, no overall change in revenues or expenses. The sewer fund reflects an increase of $219,500 in both revenue and expenses. In the Piney Dam Water Surcharge Fund, we have a change of $58,000. And in the Garbage Fund, the increase as a result of the budget amendments is $207,000. Again, and most of that was tied to the purchase of an additional garbage truck, and the 2 weeks we had to pay Bergmeyer's for our garbage collection at the beginning of July. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve resolution 2023-03.
I move we approve resolution 223-03.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, resolution 2023-04.
Yes. As mentioned before, this is the design proposals for Phase 10B and 10C of our upcoming CSO project, both from Specs Engineering. Specs Engineering has done the engineering design for the past 25 years for all of our CSO projects. The proposal for Phase 10B is $136,820. The proposal for 10C is $159,000. Those costs include design, mapping, testing, the proposals to MDE for effects after the CSOs, mapping, GIS data points, and then as-builts, and then construction management throughout the process. So questions, RFIs, anything to go along with the process. If there are any questions, I would be thrilled to field them.
And, just so everybody realizes, this is an expedited.
Yes, it is, in order to meet funding requirements, it is an extremely expedited and shortened engineering process. That's why it is a little bit more expensive, is to get it in as fast as possible so that we end up saving money by getting grant funding. So it kind of taken out of one pocket and put it in another.
And we're looking at having the design done by
We're hoping June, so
yeah. So I mean that's a lot. Something that
yeah.
normally takes what, a year.
Yes, and these projects, one of these projects, 10B, is bigger than all of 9 was combined. So these are very large projects, and we're trying to get them in as fast as possible in order to receive state funding. So that's why the cost for design seem high. But if there are any questions.
Also, typically an engineering contract runs 7 to 10% of the overall construction costs, and these are far below the projected construction costs. I won't tell you how much grant funding has gone to the design of the roundabout.
But if there are no questions, I would ask for a motion in a second for Resolution 2023-04.
I'll make a motion we approve Resolution 2023-04.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion passes. Moving on to Resolution 2023-05.
So this project, or this resolution, is for the approval of the contract for Bennett Bruin Association to do the engineering and design for the Mechanic Street parking lot. What that covers is the actual design of the parking lot itself, the environmental testing associated with that site. There will be some strict environmental testing that we're going to have them handle. They have the expertise. We want them to handle that. And then they'll put together the contract for us, tell us exactly what we need to do, and then hand it over to us. The exact cost for that, there is no final number for that yet because we're not exactly sure of what the final testing will be, but we're thinking in the neighborhood of 250? 50,000, sorry. Much smaller than the last one.
Matt Brewer did submit a draft proposal earlier this week for a little over $45,000, but he was waiting for confirmation on the environmental testing. So asbestos testing is required of the buildings, but in addition to that, with that being a former deluxe dry cleaner, there's some additional MDE involvement, and so Matt is coordinating directly with MDE and then the environmental testing consultant to make sure that they're doing the right test so that site gets removed from the potentially contaminated site registry.
If there are any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you anticipate any problem with the environmental testing?
No. If anything, it should be fairly quick. We're just doing our due diligence.
Because there's just residents, right? There's nothing else that was in there?
There
You
was the dry cleaner there, but we did preliminary testing that showed no external contamination. So MDE just wants
So
some.
if there is any contamination, you contained it to the lots?
Yes, yeah. And then that's what the environmental testing will ultimately give us, either the go-ahead or further action on what we would need to do in that instance if there was something that
Okay,
we need
thank
to
you.
work on.
I understand what they're gonna do. I just wondered if you anticipated that there was any.
Oh, no. I mean, we're just doing our due diligence just to be safe since it was a dry cleaner.
I think
So if it's removed from, if there, it shows no contamination, it's removed from that list of sites, does that still mean that we would need to cap it completely, or would be allowed to put some green stuff in there if that works with the design? I don't know.
We plan on incorporating green into the design anyway because they did the soil borings all through the back parking lot and there was no contamination there. So, and it's only that one building. So they just want us to do some type of sampling like directly within the building. But I anticipate there will be green space. If they do find some contamination in the building, what
I think will happen is we have to just excavate and landfill a certain portion of dirt in a secure landfill that might be contaminated with the VOCs, and then that part would be sealed with asphalt, and then they'd probably put like an environmental easement on it that no building could ever be built there again.
And that it would just remain a parking lot.
Right.
So if there are no further questions, I would ask for a motion and a second for resolution 2023-05.
I'll make a motion, we approve resolution 2023-05.
Second?
Moved in second. Any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. On to the next one. Resolution 2023-06. This is all the change orders we've had come up basically in the last 2 months since we haven't had a meeting. The first is for a CSO project, Phase 9B, Change Order 2 and Change Order 3. To clarify, Change Order 3 is a credit. That's money back to us. But Change Order 2, $67,677. Basically what that was, we had to move a water line for the sake of sewer and storm work. The water line that we had to remove gave us fits and troubles for weeks on end. We couldn't get any valves to close around it. What we ended up having to do was install some new valves and a new section of water line in order to make that fit. So that's what that change order was. It was not initially designed for, but it had to be done. Street department roof, Vertex Roofing, change order 1 was for a drain that initially wasn't planned for, but we decided to add in just to handle some increased capacity to $2,800. Change order 2 was unexpected. We ended up coming across a portion of the roof that structurally was not sound. We couldn't put new roofing on top of it, and we ended up having to take out a large portion of the structure of the roof and put it in, and we couldn't account for that beforehand. So that number, $39,500, was to replace the structure, well, remove the old structure, replace with new structural material, and then sheet it, and then actually put the new roofing membrane on top. The chlorine tank replacement at the water treatment plant, so that was an ongoing project. All of the chlorine tank went fairly well. Change order 1 was fairly small. We ended up having to replace a day tank there. A day tank is just a chemical feed tank. It had some cracks and leaks in it, and we just decided while we were there, it was in the best interest of the city to go ahead and do that day tank while it was butted up next to the new chlorine tank. Change order 2 was a similar nature. It was partially to increase capacity, partially another day tank, just a different chemical. While they were in there, it was in the best interest to have it done and keep costs down. And then finally, change order 3. None of that has been done yet. That was not originally part of the chlorine contract. However, as many of you on the council are aware, we are providing water to Lonaconing and Midland right now, and it doesn't seem like that is going away anytime soon. So the change orders there, number 3, not to exceed $39,110, is to have Combro, while they're in there doing the chemicals in the day tanks and the chlorine tanks, is to have them make some last final upgrades to increase our capacity to really safely put us over our maximum daily demand with the addition of Coney and Midland. And then even once Coney and Midland are off of our water, those changes are still beneficial to the city anyways because they increase our future capacity. And for what it costs, since Combro is already in there, I would highly recommend it. I know
It's not a bigger tank though, because they already put the tank in.
It's a different tank. So there's a chlorine tank. There's also caustic soda and a few other chemicals there. Those are the tanks that will be part of that change order. I know that was a lot. If there are any questions on any of the change orders, feel free to lay them on me. If there are not, then I would ask for a motion and a second for resolution 2023-06.
I move we approve resolution 2023-06.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right. Resolution 2023-07.
from Resolution 2023-07, which would authorize purchases for the police department, including tasers and in-car laptops and mounts. You recall from your work session, my esteemed colleague Sergeant Mulaney gave a presentation on the needs and the cost of those things. We would anticipate and ask for your approval to use ARPA funds to do that. Certainly glad to elaborate further or ask any questions, and Sergeant Mulaney has come just in case anyone has any particular questions. He's kind of our tech supervisor among many other hats. So one of the things we talked with Elizabeth about for the new budget is to add a line for technology replacement annually, so we don't end up in a situation like this again where we have to replace in bulk.
I think maybe you could explain why we're replacing the tasers. Some people don't understand the age of them and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of the tasers are in excess of their warranty and life cycle. There have been some defective ones which obviously have been taken out of service. The computers, a lot of them are very slow, kind of aged, at least, some of them are probably 10 years old, 7 to 10 years old. So, when you're on the side of the road on a traffic stop, you want to be done in a timely manner so the person isn't sitting there waiting. And when the computer's really slow, the printer's really slow, you have a lot of those types of issues. So I'm not sure if Sergeant Mulaney wants to expand on that a little bit, but that's kind of the basic gist of it.
Yeah, just the operational, like the tasers, obviously it's an officer safety issue. We had one just mysteriously go off, and it was distributed due to age. They're kind of mini computers themselves. Even the manufacturer doesn't even do updated firmwares anymore, so they're obsolete. And same thing with computers. Trying to keep up with modern technologies, with body cameras coming down the pipeline, license plate readers, that type of stuff. We didn't need some computers to be able to keep up with the technology.
Certainly glad to answer any questions or elaborate further. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2023-07.
I make a motion, we approve Resolution 2023-07.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Kevin, you ought to give us a presentation on the taser.
Yeah, I can tase Nick.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to Resolution 2023-08.
Thank you. In the past, you've had agreements with the Frostburg Fire Department to allow them to use acquired structures or properties the city comes to own for various reasons that they plan on tearing down to do training exercises in. From what I understand, acquired structures are like manna in the for the fire departments to have in terms of where to be able to train, because every building's different and each presents a new learning opportunity for them. So this resolution authorizes two separate hold harmless agreements, one for 167 Bowery Street that was acquired for the purpose of real estate needed for the roundabout, and then 28, 30, and 32 West Mechanic Street, which is for the downtown parking lot. There's two separate agreements just because of the nature of the timing of them, and that's about it. There's something else to that's about it. Is we need to get 167 down a little sooner than the Mechanic Street ones. So again, it mirrors your agreements from past projects. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion in a second to authorize the mayor to sign hold harmless and release agreements.
You might not know the answer to this, but because the structures on West Mechanic are in kind of tight quarters there, are like the neighbors going to be notified and everything? Because
so depending,
will it be blocked off? Will the alley be for the street people?
the agreement provides for that. So like if they're just going to be operating in the parking lot and doing drills inside, that's not like causing commotion. There's nothing required. But if they're going to be blocking any streets, doing drills out of the front of the building that's going to cause alarm, they're required to notify both the chief and I in writing, and then depending on what they're doing, we can take appropriate action to notify the surrounding properties.
this is an enormous benefit for the training. I got to watch a lot of the training over on Center Street when we tore those buildings down. They worked in it, and it's just a great example of having the buildings to train out of, rather than just stand in the fire hall and say, this is what the area looks like. They can actually go into these areas. So it's a good benefit for the fire department.
You get a motion in a second?
I make a motion we adopt Resolution 2023-08.
Second.
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to Resolution 2023-09.
Staff have recommended different appointments for your consideration. There's a vacancy on the Planning Commission, and Eric Stevens was one of several applicants. Staff are recommending he's appointed to a 5-year term on the Planning Commission to expire in 2028. And then Dottie Turner, Sean White, and Mark Roquet are all serving on the Recreation Commission and have agreed to serve for another 2-year term to expire in 2025. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, I ask for a motion in a second to approve Resolution 2023-09.
I'll make a motion, we approve Resolution 2023-09.
Second?
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 2023-10.
Thank you. This resolution updates current city policy. It clearly addresses the per diem schedule to reference the GSA, or the federal standards, which provides meal allowances by zip code throughout the United States, so that our employees have clear direction on how much they can be spending. This would also address mileage. Mileage is mileage reimbursement rate for when a staff member is traveling out of town and a staff car is not available, just because we don't have one for every person, and especially right now with many of us traveling back and forth to Annapolis. It changes the mileage rate to be the federal mileage rate, which is currently 65.5 cents, but it would just update as the federal mileage reimbursement rate updates. So it goes up and down with fuel costs and similar things. And then it would clearly define a credit card policy and authorize members of the council who wish to have a city credit card, as well as senior staff and supervisors to have credit cards as well. And the record keeping requirements associated with having a credit card, and obviously the consequences if you don't follow the rules. So if there's any questions on those, that's just cleaning up and some new revised direction going forward. But again, any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion in a second to approve Resolution 2023-10.
I move we approve Resolution 2023-10.
Second?
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And Resolution 2023-11.
Okay, last one. As you know, several months ago we were looking to hire a code enforcement officer / permits clerk, and then we hadn't made a decision to fill that position, and an opportunity presented itself to be able to keep one of our seasonal Parks and Recreation workers that had code experience on to help with Parks and Rec as they keep taking on more and more projects and doing more and more for the city, as well as assist here at the City Hall, code enforcement and permits clerk. So they've been a contractual position to date, and this arrangement has worked really well. Job duties have been shifted around so that is a part-time job, and that individual has done exceedingly well in that position, and then, you know, is a valued member of the Parks and Rec crew as well. So what this resolution is doing is creating a new permanent position in the city that it's not really a new net position, but it's just creating a new title that would be a really long title of Code Enforcement Officer, Permits Clerk / MEO. So working for two different departments. So a little unique, but in these times where it's, you know, difficult to find employees for certain jobs, this has been a good solution for the city. So I'd recommend a motion and a second for Resolution 2023-11.
I move we approve Resolution 2023-11.
Second?
Moved in second. Any public comment? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the report of the police department.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening again. I have the report for the Police Department for January 2023. We had 590 incidents compared to 524 in January of 2021. As always, a diverse array of activities, 12 arrests of various sorts, including 4 DWIs, 93 parking violations. Just always touch on some random things. 36 requests for a police officer, 11 follow-up investigations, 37 disturbances, 7 motor vehicle crashes, 78 traffic stops, 76 traffic details. So always doing kind of a combination of diverse policing, community service activities, traffic control activities, criminal activities, and as always, a lot of the bulk of our work is the public service right there in the middle. Requests for a police officer cover a wide array of incidents. Well-being checks are fairly common. We had 15 of them with 5 emergency petitions, and always kind of a little bit of everything. We're always balancing our enforcement and our traditional policing work with our community service and community engagement efforts. So we had a very good series of activities through January, and recently, just some examples, we were down at the Mountain City Peace Healthcare Center, the nursing home, having cocoa with the residents there. We have done 2 prescription take-back programs recently. Several of us were at the grand opening for Big Lots. We gave a talk at the new 4-H program that meets at the United Methodist Church, so it's a good leadership program for young people. We talked about how to run meetings, how to exhibit good leadership characteristics and those sorts of things, and a few visits to the senior center. So, as I always say, policing is a good mixture of being immersed in the community, being a part of it, and addressing community issues. So, as always, I'm glad to elaborate further or answer any questions, but otherwise I would conclude my report.
I think it maybe would explain why there was no money brought in on the meters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it's a little, December and January are always kind of unique because through the end of November, December, we usually don't collect the meters because of the storybook holiday decorations. They're covered up. And enforcement does begin again once storybook holiday is over. But I don't think we did much meter enforcement in January. Sometimes weather is a factor. I'm trying to remember what the weather was like in January, but some of that is sort of complaint driven too. We get honestly kind of pulled in between everybody, frankly, on these parking meters because you have some businesses who are frustrated at other businesses parking there and this sort of thing. And then you get other businesses who are saying, hey, why are you guys ticketing all my customers? We really can't win. So sometimes if we're not getting a lot of complaints or a lot of flack, we don't push it as hard. But sometimes that also is offset by the work we have going on in the police station. You know, follow-up investigations are an easy example. Sometimes they can take 5 minutes, sometimes they can take 5 hours. We've had several unattended deaths recently, and in those cases, you don't hear about them in the paper, you don't see those things, but we might be at somebody's house for 5 hours waiting for the medical examiner, waiting for the medical transport, phone calls to the doctors and these sorts of people. So there's always a number of factors that could influence that, but don't know of many complaints lately, and I know we've had several time-consuming incidents like that recently. Hopefully that answers well enough, Commissioner, unless you had any other thoughts. Commissioner Graves out downtown all the time, so he has a good ear to the ground if we're getting any requests or concerns too.
He wants to know if he can keep parking in front of the Princess.
Yes. Yes, and we talked before, there are some
questions about the handicap placard parking, how long they should be allowed to park there, how to enforce that. We talked about that different times too, so some of that's still up in the air until we get some more clarity, I think, on what you want us to do there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, open public comment. Anyone wishing to comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Carl Dries. I live on Braddock Road, 1142 Braddock Road. I'm actually not a city resident, but I was born and raised here. My family is here, my nieces and nephews are here, and they'll be attending Mountain Ridge in the near future. And I came here to talk about an issue, something that's been bothering me. I just kind of find it fascinating that the city of Frostburg has allowed a business to open up right next door to Mountain Ridge High School that sells Delta 8 and Delta 10 THC cannabis products. And I'm kind of wondering, has anybody, I guess my question here first off is, has anybody measured to see if that's even within 1,000 feet of Mountain Ridge High School? Because I believe they have drug-free school zone laws in Maryland that can probably be an issue.
This is something I think we're going to need to bring up with our attorney
Okay.
and discuss with him.
The thing, I just want to mention something here too. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Google Maps. I mean, you could do this right now if you wanted to here. But you can drop a pin on that business and through Google Maps measure a straight line as the crow flies distance, and it's under 1,000 feet.
I don't disagree with you. I don't even know what the stuff is, honestly.
Well, they passed, I can explain it a little bit. A few years ago they passed a bill called the Farm Bill, which basically stipulated that you could sell hemp products that only have 0.3% THC or less. THC is the active ingredient in marijuana, cannabis. So you can sell these products if they have 0.3% or less. Well, these people have figured out a way, and that 0.3% is Delta 9 THC. That's the active ingredient in marijuana that gets you high or whatever, makes you feel, an effect. So this Delta 9 THC is strictly controlled, regulated federally, all that. And in Maryland, we have the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, who you have to go through if you want to seek a medical prescription to get that. But they got around that because these Delta 8 and Delta 10 THCs don't have Delta 9 THC, they say. They don't have, it still has a similar effect, still gets people, high or whatever. But it's a loophole in the Farm Bill that was allowed whenever they passed that. So right now, I don't know that there's anything that could be enforced, like if you went over there and tried to stop him from selling that. I don't think there's regulations in Maryland currently to do that, but they're coming, because in July, whenever they regulate or pass adult use legislation, they're gonna have to do something with Delta 8 and Delta 10. But in the meantime, theoretically, I could go over there tomorrow morning, purchase some of this stuff, because this is another really big question I have, is has any testing been done on these products that are being sold within 1,000 feet of a school? The funny thing about these Delta 8 products and Delta 10 products is that they're often mislabeled, they're not regulated. So if I was to go over there tomorrow and pick up a couple of these products and take them to a state lab and have them tested, I'm willing to bet that they're gonna come back with more than 0.3% Delta 9 THC, which would mean that that's in violation of drug-free school zones.
Would it be a state responsibility then to do that testing?
I could do the testing. I could go pick it up myself tomorrow and then take it to an independent lab and have it tested and come back with the results and say, this is illegal.
What business is this?
It's just called Cigars and Tobacco or
With
something.
a place up on the plaza?
It's right beside Subway and the call center, I believe. Yeah, in the plaza. And that's a really big question too, is I don't know how you consider the parking in that plaza, but since he's just part of that huge parking lot, one of those businesses, is that all considered part of his business? Like, theoretically, could I park down by the theater and then just walk over to his shop and pick up stuff? If so, that parking lot's definitely within 1,000 feet of the school.
Yeah, like I said, we'll consult with our attorney, Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, because I see that as being an issue. I mean, I'm just trying to save you guys from bad stuff coming like that. But it's been bugging me. I mean, I don't think it's gonna, within months anyway, I'm saying like July-ish, August-ish, probably they're gonna pass something in the state of Maryland to deal with this. But in the meantime, you guys are probably open to liability there. Just